What's going on, riders? Cody from Motorcycle MD. And in this video, I wanted to bring you guys a tutorial on how to properly remove the carburetor from a Honda Shadow 750 single carb. It might seem very simple for some of us, but for those of you who have never dived into the bike in this fashion, when it comes to cleaning the carburetor out, removing the tank, maybe doing a coolant flush, doing anything like this that requires certain parts to be removed, airbox, this, that, and the other, this is going to be the proper way to get in and out of there cleanly, without ripping hoses, without tearing any fuel lines, getting the job done right the first time. But before we begin, I wanted to give you guys an extra bonus. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and join my mailing list. I have a free gift for you just for subscribing. It's a little troubleshooting cheat sheet that will come in very handy when you start running into any kind of issues you have with your bike, common issues with your particular bike, troubleshooting tips, diagnostic stuff. It's awesome. Check it out. And one more thing before we dive in, obviously you're going after the carburetor for a reason. If you haven't been in there before, carburetors may not be the most basic common sense maintenance item on your bike. It takes a little bit of effort. Let me tell you guys something. I have single, twin carb, inline 4 stuff all laid out for you after this video is over with. Be sure to check out the link, guys. Pro tutorial. This is stuff that I break down step by step. Ripping apart completely, putting them back together. This is VT1100 stuff, 750's twin stuff, inline 4 Nighthawk stuff, VTX stuff. I mean, if you follow these videos, I can guarantee you which one you pick. Doesn't matter. The fundamental knowledge and the pro tips and then just the know-how is there in every one of the videos. I don't care which bike you have, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki. If you follow those carburetor videos, I guarantee you will be satisfied. So be sure to check out the videos, guys, as well as the inner circle. You don't want to miss out. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy this tutorial. Alright, so if you are watching this, obviously you probably own an 06 VT750. The first thing you need to do, obviously take the seat off. Next step will be to remove the top cover on the top of your tank. Really easy. It's a 5mm Allen, and now take the top cover off. You don't need to unplug anything. Just lay it off to the side. Again, seat comes off. Then I will show you exactly how to take the fuel lines off of the tank so we can get that in a safe location so we can access the carb. The next thing that you will want to do is then the airbox. So let's go ahead and pop this seat off. There's 2 Allen bolts on both sides, as well as whatever someone put in there, maybe a 6mm Phillips head, 10mm Allen, whatever, and get that seat completely off. All right, the next thing you will need to do then is to grab this bolt here, which holds the bottom of the tank down, and again, this cover up top of here. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove those. You may notice a rubber grommet here right on top of the tank. Keep that right where it's at, okay? You don't want to lose that. That helps with vibration and noise from this cover. What I like to do is just put the bolts right back into where they were so you don't lose them. Next thing I'll do is just remove this back bolt here. And what you should see is a bolt, a kind of funky looking washer that will hold it all in place, as well as a spacer right in the middle. Now while I have this tank up, what I'll do is I'll remove the vacuum line from the tank on the right hand side of the bike. It's right here. It helps vent the tank during operation. Okay, so you just go ahead and pull that down right now and get that all undone. Hello. Alright, so to remove the tank, on this system there is a vacuum operated petcock. Alright, there is a smaller vacuum hose feeding the petcock saying, hey, when a motorcycle is running, I want to give it fuel to the carbs. Okay, it's as simple as that. So you have a vacuum on a small little hose that runs right to the back of the petcock. So what I do is take a needle and those pliers, grab the back side of it, and you simply just pry it off slightly. Now while you're here, what you want to look for is any splitting in that hose, okay? You may notice some cracks on the side. You may even notice a hole right here on this bend. Very, very important to make sure you look at that before you dig even deeper. All right, the next thing you want to do is you have your main fuel hose that's running directly off of the fuel valve. All right, it's located directly back from here. It goes straight back towards the carb. Now there is a little circlip on it, really easy to use. Just press the 2 tabs together and it will slide off evenly. I may not be able to get the best shot for you guys, but regardless, it's pretty simple to do. So if I lift this tank up slightly, I'll have a little bit more access, all right? Then I can take my needle nose pliers, give it a slight twist just to get it moving, and I can pull this hose off. You may notice a little bit of fuel leak down, no problem. Grab a rag, throw it underneath there. With that hose on the other side taken off, these two hoses here, as well as the back bolt, this tank is ready to be taken off.
That's cool. You got my fingers in there.
You're in there, man.
Yeah.
So obviously I am blessed enough to have the bike up on a motorcycle stand. Now with the bike on a side stand, it's really simple to get the tanks off. They kind of sit inside of these two ears, okay? So imagine my hands are how the tank sits onto the frame. So what I'll do is I will just simply slide the tank backwards, slightly up on the rear, and the whole tank will come off all as one. I usually put my hand right up on the tank here. I'm gonna show you guys just like this. I'm just gonna up on the back, slide back slightly. All right, so now that the tank is off, we'll move on to the airbox. Now the airbox is super simple, okay? Now, just to give you a little bit of background history of this bike in particular, customer brought it in, and when he turned the bike on and got it running, or at least tried to get it running, fuel was just being dumped out of the carburetor, which automatically tells me that the float is stuck, all right? So the float's stuck. There ain't no point in trying to do all these little sea foam tricks or any kind of other stupid chemical cleaners. It's just, you gotta get in the carburetor and clean it out, which is why I'm doing this. So what you may find, this is just a little bit of side note, is that when you have a situation where the fuel is actually overflowing, two things can happen. One, it can fill the airbox up completely with gas. The second thing is that it can actually fill the crankcase up. All right, and the crankcase fills up, you may notice that with your bike in the center position, off the kickstand as if you were sitting on the bike, you pull the dipstick out, like I will do right now. Pull the dipstick out and you may notice an averagely high oil level. And this is where the oil level should be there. This one's up to about here, which means that fuel has actually overflooded the carb, gone on top of the pistons in this V-twin motor, seeped down past the rings and into the crankcase. It's a dangerous situation because you could actually hydrolock the motor if you're not careful. But in this case, the oil level is high. I'm gonna take this air filter cover off so we can remove it and access, ding, 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 that carb right there. So air filter cover is super easy. Takes a 4mm Allen. I'm gonna go ahead and just zip these all off of here. Just doing this just to check to see what the air filter actually looks like. Two things are either gonna happen. It's gonna dump fuel out everywhere, or the filter will be completely covered and soaked in fuel. So all these screws are out. I can pull this cover off, and it's actually not that bad. Surprise. So the air filter itself is black. If I smell it, it smells like fuel, and it may actually even be saturated with fuel. We're gonna wanna replace that air filter and then move on. All right, so now we're at the airbox assembly itself. There are two 6mm bolts that hold this cover on, okay? One here, one there. Simply pull those off. You'll actually have a hose, crankcase breather hose that attaches right to the back, as well as the clamp that holds the air filter box assembly onto the carb. All right, so loosen that Phillips head screw off, loosen this hose, take it completely off. By doing those 4 different things, you will gain full access to the carb. Got my needle nose pliers here. I'm gonna pull this clip up so it's in my way so I can actually get to it. Sometimes you can actually just pry these back off and then it'll fall into your hand just like that. At the bottom of the airbox, you'll find your main adjustment screw for the RPM. No problem, you just simply unclasp that from the airbox, and look at that. We are at the mouth of the carb. So the main things to get access to obviously are the throttle cables, which fully control how the carburetor responds to what you give it, as well as a couple of small things that we need to take off or loosen to get this carb off. Luckily, it's just a single carb. It's actually the more simpler VT750 carburetor setups. You have a throttle position sensor, okay, that runs off the carb. Simple wire that runs right back behind this clasp here. All right, and runs straight into the harness. It's a really simple connector. If you actually pull the tab down, so towards this thermostat housing, There's a little tab inside of there. I'd love to show you guys, but it'd be a very, very hard shot to get. But it's right underneath here. If you pull that down, you can pull this connector out, and boom. I'm not going to worry about the throttle cables right now because all I want to do is get the carb in my hand so then I can work with the throttle cables then. It's too hard to work with them how they are right now. So on this side, you'll notice that you have your choke plunger. Obviously, this connects directly to the carb. All we have is this nut right behind here. Just loosen this up, and that would allow us to unclamp it from where its hold is. Side note, if you have a choke system or a choke plunger that is not wanting to stay out and it kind of guides its way back in, this front plate here is actually hidden by a boot. And you see the little threaded pitch right here. If you tighten this, this would allow the choke to stay out. Now, I've gotten the choke loose. The main fuel line is loose. There's a couple of other small things we got to do to get this thing ready to go. All right, so you may notice that you have some vacuum lines. All right, this is the air cut valve on the carb. All right, so if you want, you can simply just take your fingernails and pry that hose off. All right, there's one. You actually have a second one on the back side of this carb. You can pry that one off as well. And make sure that you inspect them, of course, after you're done. As you can see here on this hose, it's got cracking all along the lip of it. All right, I will never put this hose back on this carb. So make sure you inspect all of these hoses. A lot of times, if that front one is actually worn out, you know, from the weather, heating up, cooling down, dried out, and it's cracking, 98% of the time, the rest of the hoses are exactly the same way. So be prepared to buy a spool of hose so that you can replace these. They're super simple. Just measure the length, cut, and apply as needed. All right, so the choke's loose. Let's see what else we got here. Throttle position sensor is loose. We have this hose right here that we need to pull off as well. It has a clamp. We can grab my needle nose pliers again, your best friend for doing carburetors. I'm going to simply just go end to end, pull them together, if I can do it. Pull it away, pry on the very edge of the hose because we don't want to damage the hose by grabbing it here. We want to go as far up as we can and pull this completely off. Yeah, there we go. All right, so once that's off, now we have the clamp that's actually holding the carbs in. You'll see there's two clamps holding onto the carb itself. All right, you have two clamps. You have one in the front, one in the back. We want to loosen up this front one in the back. It's a Phillips head screw. So I'll grab a Phillips head screwdriver, get right underneath this choke lever. What I like to do is put my finger on the very edge of the screw and just back it off just far enough to where I say, okay, you know, that's enough before I lose everything that's holding on to it. Okay, and then once that clamp is loose, take some brute force. I'm going to kind of pry up and then pry back down until this carb comes completely loose. All right, you have a hose coming here. No problem, you can just take that right out of its holder there. Okay, no issue there at all. I'm going to kind of pull the choke and the fuel tube through as I pull this out, but just far enough that I can access these throttle cables, okay? Because there's two more hoses we need to worry about in a second. All right, so let's grab a 10mm wrench. We're going to loosen up these throttle cables. Take this lock nut off this one, and as you loosen this throttle cable, the lower nut should stay put, okay? And you can actually back this off completely. I'm going to work on this back one as well. So I can actually pull this front cable down, which makes it a lot easier to get to this back one. I know it's kind of in your way. Once that's loose enough to where you can pull it out of the holder, go ahead and do so. Just like that. Both of them are out now. Now what I can do is gingerly take the throttle cable and just kind of pry it right off of its butterfly. It's very easy how it works. It's just, there's a one-way valve for it for that cable to go through. Once you pull it out, the cylinder will come out with it. Pretty much basic stuff right there. So pull this cable out, that cable will come out right with it. I'm going to tuck these up top of there so they're out of the way. Okay, so last two things to do before we get this carb off. So this is going to be a little bit tricky. All right, if you want to remove this fuel tube, you can. Make it a little bit easier to access. And you got two more lines directly to the bottom of the carb. Those are actually coolant lines. Heating up the bottom of the bowl, which allows that fuel atomization process to work at a much better rate. All right, so you may notice that when you take these tubes off, these hoses off, you'll lose coolant. Okay, if you have a pair of some kind of hose clamp, that'd be great to use, and do the best you can to keep that in. Sometimes it leaks out, sometimes it doesn't, but it's probably going to leak out. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and take these clamps off. I'm going to take these 3 legs and move them up into a position where I can actually access them, grab them all together, and just kind of slowly twist down the line. That gets it out of the way. Move on to the next one, do the exact same thing. Grab the 3 legs, slowly twist as they move down. Okay, what you don't want to do with these lines is just start grabbing them and ripping at them, all right? Because what you can do is tear it. And if you tear it, you'll be waiting an extra day or an extra 4 days until you get new parts in your mailbox to get these things fixed, all right? So just work at the top of the hose down, pull that hose off. I'm going to work on this bottom one. I'm going to get a little twist to get it started, work at the top and work its way down, all right? And actually, look at that. I got lucky. No coolant is coming out. But what's more important is that you now have your carburetor out of the bike. I know.